So this video is going to be different from my normal videos. Basically, what I want to do is just talk about my reflections on the last 5 videos on the genre of Japanese prints, specifically Shinhanga, Susaku Hanga, and Ukiyo-e. Really enjoyed making these videos, kind of like my intro to the art world, starting in Japan, which is kind of a different way to start, but a very interesting one nonetheless. Like, I think that it makes sense to me because Japanese art has inspired a lot of Western art, and not only that, but it's just so distinct from different art forms that I'm going to cover later. Like, woodblock art as a medium is so different, just from the process, from the outcome, than acrylic on canvas, or charcoal, or oil, or watercolor, whatever I might be covering next. So I thought it was a really interesting place to start. And yeah, I mean, I'm really into sort of Japanese history. I think the feudal Japan, the period of like Edo Japan and before that, are like super interesting because it's just like so different from the rest of the world. Like, it's very rare that you get a civilization like so advanced that's also not really super connected to the rest of the world. You end up with some really interesting art, some really interesting buildings, some really interesting cultures and religions that come out of these isolated sort of civilizations. I think another one that really interests me that I've loved to cover in the future is like the Mayan, Aztec, and Incan civilizations. They've produced some like super interesting art that's just like totally different from everything else because they're not doing trade with the old world, as we call it. So really interesting period of art in Japan. These Japanese prints, I think probably my first deep dive into it was coming across a book on Amazon on Hiroshige. So I saw that and I was just like, oh, this is kind of interesting. Like, maybe I'll check this out. Bought the book, and yeah, it was like amazing. Started reading it, and I just started getting a new appreciation of the world outside my window, so to speak. Like, I just like looked at trees and started looking at how the light hit the trees and the different colors. It was spring when I was reading this book, so the trees were blossoming. My allergies were horrible, but I was kind of like looking through my watery eyes and seeing these like really beautiful scenes, like watching sunsets, and yeah, I just like looked at everything from a new perspective. So thank you, Hiroshige, for that. But yeah, I think that was like just such a cool experience. I wanted to do more than just, my original plan was just to do those playlists. Like, I do those vibe to art playlists where I just kind of show some of my favorite works by an artist and put it to music that I think is like kind of matches the vibe, so to speak. Yeah. So that was my original plan. But then after reading that Hiroshige book, learning about him, I'm just like, oh, I need to get this sort of message out in like a way that's more palatable than everyone having to read a book to get it. Because for me, what it did for me was I read the book and I started to see the world around me differently. So that's like, it's pretty profound. Like, if I can give that to somebody else, that's awesome. Or just like even give somebody else the ability to appreciate the art in a new way. So I think having a little bit of the history, having a little bit of sort of the art history, the sort of breakdown, really helps in just kind of understanding what you're looking at. Because like, it's sort of like poetry. Like, I think the way that I've been taught to read poetry is that like you read it one time straight through, get your let it hit you, get the first impression without trying to like overthink it, and just kind of let your heart like feel it, and then you read it a second time through and sort of break it down line by line, and then you can even read it further and just like go into technique and kind of appreciate it on a different level. But really that it's that first time that kind of like sets a tone. So like if a piece of art, if an artwork just like strikes you right away, you know, that's everything. But then everything after that kind of adds to that. And sometimes some works like might not even strike you so much right away, and then when you learn about them, you begin to appreciate them more. But I think it's usually not the case. It's usually the case that something just like really catches your eye and you're like, I want to learn everything about that. How was that made? Who made that? That's where I started at. So with Japanese prints, yeah. So one of the reasons why it's so distinct is that it's made with a woodblock. It's not made with acrylic or charcoal or watercolor. It's literally made by carving like sort of a negative into a block of wood and then putting a layer of color on it, printing it, letting it dry, printing a different layer of color, kind of doing gradients and different textures. It's crazy the amount of work that went into that, and why? Because it could be mass produced. This was before color printers. This was a color printer before color printers, so it's kind of a really cool way to start the channel because it's the People's Republic of Art, and this was art for the people. You know, it was not art for art collectors or the super wealthy. Like, it wasn't made for some royalty or anything like that. Like, this was made to be sold in mass, which I think is dope, because I mean, this was like the theme of my channel is I want to make art accessible to everyone, or at least art appreciation. And I think that's what these artists did, especially Ukiyo-e, the first one that I covered. He made a lot of prints and kind of definitely got them out there so far that they reached Europe and they inspired Van Gogh. So that's huge. I mean, that's crazy. That's amazing. This was all in the late 1800s. So really cool history behind that. The other sort of anecdote that I think is really cool about this art style is that Steve Jobs was a huge fan of Japanese prints, specifically Shinhanga. Like, he was a collector. In 1983, he's in Tokyo, I think meeting Sony, and you know, this is like real early Apple. He walks into an art gallery in Tokyo in Ginza, and he goes to the gallery owner and he says, "Hey, I'm gonna start collecting Shinhanga. Please teach me everything you know." Right? Like, pretty cool way to like walk into a gallery. But so the guy then goes and starts teaching him. He picks out his first piece, which is called like Morning Air, and it's super rare because the government actually restricted this specific work because it was like not super tidy. Like, it showed someone in their a woman in her like natural habitat, you know, living a normal life with her hair a little bit messed up. So this was like looked down upon in like the 1930s when this was created, and Steve Jobs bought one for $7,000, which was a high price for a Shinhanga work in the 1980s. So he was a big fan. He put his money down for, you know, what he thought was cool. and I think that's dope. He ended up bringing back 43 works to California. He had 33 more on reserve in Japan, Tokyo. Out of those 43, 25 were Hasui Kwasi, which is one of the artists that I covered in an earlier video. Amazing artist. Amazing, but like super like overlooked and kind of like looked down upon by art critics, in the sense that he made art that just like made you feel good and like didn't really say much, but I think that has value, right? Like not all art has to make like this like bold political statement. Like you have art that just you look at it and you feel a sense of nostalgia, or you feel like just, hey, that's beautiful and it makes me feel good. There's nothing wrong with that. And Steve Jobs was a huge fan of this specific kind of artwork. He bought 25 of them, and he actually died next to Hasui Kwasi paintings, or prints. There was 3 next to his bedside. His daughter talked about this, but yeah, there was 3 next to his bedside as he passed. So like that really gave him peace. This is beautiful. That's beautiful. I mean, I would love to have some Hasui Kwasi paintings in my house. Really peaceful stuff. Beautiful to look at. You can look at it forever and just kind of get lost in it. Some of the other artists that I covered in these 5 videos, I'm kind of doing a reflection here. My favorite was the most recent, Ukiyo-e, the Demon of Painting. Just crazy life story, crazy artwork, super interesting, and he's a like really good guy. That was what surprised me the most, because the guy's getting the nickname the Demon of Painting. I'm thinking that he's gonna be like this terrible person, because everything I'm reading about him is he loves sake, he loves brothels, and he was just like assaulting people and just kind of a maniac. And then I read more about him, and he's like extremely charitable and humble, and just kind of like the antithesis of what you think of like a pretentious artist. Like he's not. He was like super humble and just kind of chill. Like he seemed like kind of a really chill guy to like know. And also, what inspired him to get started was this really interesting story that I mentioned in the beginning, or I like tell the story in the beginning of the video. He found a decapitated head in a river when he was 9 years old, like, and he loved it. Like he was inspired by it, and that's what kind of propelled him to do this kind of like grotesque art that was really dark. And he loved anatomy, and I think to each his own. Like if that's what he likes, that's what he finds beautiful, then he made some really cool stuff. Like I'm not particularly interested in that stuff, but I'm interested in his art. Like I think his art was amazing. He's got some just really different views of monsters. Like we have like such a conformist view of what a monster looks like in the West. I think that we developed that over time, but some of the monsters that I saw Ukiyo-e paint, they look totally different than anything that I think of when I think of monsters. So I think it's really interesting and fascinating, and just kind of wanted to cover that and show everyone else. That's what the whole idea of those Vibe to Art playlists, that was the original channel, was just kind of getting some works that sort of spoke to me or that I thought were cool, and setting them to some music that sort of went with the vibe. Then I realized, you know, there's a story to be told in each of these artworks, and there's more that can be appreciated. And yeah, I mean, I hope that for someone else, maybe this gets you interested in Japanese woodblock printing, and you know, maybe you have the same experience with me, where like I just looking at these works, I started to appreciate the world around me in, you know, a more profound way. It sounds kind of like, I don't know, but it's true. It's true. Like, I really started looking at like lighting, and when I see a sunset, like I see like almost like it looks like a print. And that was something that Hausui Kawase actually said. It was like, I started to see that when I look at nature, I start to see prints, right? And the blurring of art and life, it's beautiful when you think about it. Like, it's really beautiful to like actually just look at nature and see art. I think that's something that we don't do enough in our daily lives, because I don't really have access to technology, and it's more engaging than looking at trees and stuff. But trees are dope. We should look at trees more. On that note, I'll end this. But thank you so much to everyone who subscribed. There are 11 of you now, so thank you. I probably know at least half of you, so thanks for your support. I appreciate it. And if I don't know you, thank you even more. Thank you just for like trying this out. And no, thank you everyone. This is amazing. I hope that I can like engage and maybe even collaborate with other people in the art space. So yeah, I'm excited for what I'm going to cover next. Surrealism, so excited for that. But might revisit Japanese art as well, who knows. One more time, thank you so much.